Welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of the Nonprofit Technology Conference. It's day 2. We're hosted by N10, the Nonprofit Technology Network, and we're in Austin at the Convention Center. My guest is Osvaldo Gomez. He's Technology Director for Upleaf. Welcome, Osvaldo.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Your topic is using technology and online communication to reach rural or marginalized populations. Excellent. That's a real niche topic. Before we get into it, and we have plenty of time to do that, let's define the rural and marginalized. How do you consider those?
So I think that the most important thing is to understand that there are lots of populations that could be considered rural or marginalized. The most obvious one is Hispanics. There's obviously a language barrier. There's undocumented immigrants or other circumstances that by default you assume that it's a somewhat marginalized population.
Okay.
And when you add up Hispanics that live in rural areas, then they kind of have the double whammy.
Okay. People who are very, very hard to reach.
Exactly.
Online.
Kind of off the grid, yeah.
All right. Do they have... this is really dangerous. We're generalizing about lots of different populations.
Yes, exactly.
But we're talking about the Hispanic population because the work was with the Hispanic Access Foundation.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. So how can we, with recognizing that we're generalizing,
yes.
Do they have mobile devices largely?
So that was very interesting for us to learn. When we started working with the project, we realized that there were 3 things that could help us. First, it's online communication. Because it's a nationwide effort, it's really hard to get to everyone in person. Although
there was a grassroots component to this also.
Yes, there was.
Go ahead. I don't want to take you off your point. Go ahead. We have plenty of time. Don't worry. Yeah.
And so it was hard to get to everyone in person. And it was also expensive to get to everyone through traditional media. If you do TV, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And so the obvious choice was to go online.
Okay, online number 1.
Exactly. Yeah. Then the next one is mobile devices. And mobile devices helped us not just in the front end, because people, like you were saying, there's a high incidence of smartphone use.
There is. There's good penetration.
Yes.
Even among the marginalized and rural.
There is.
Okay.
And then, but it didn't only help us there, but it also helped us in the back end for us to actually run the operation. So when we were doing a grassroots event, then it made sense to have the staff that was running the event using, in their case, it was iPads, and using a mobile device because it allowed them to do data entry on the spot.
Okay, so for the back end also there was online, and then is there a third, or that is the
yes? So
third?
So we said online communication, and we said mobile devices. The third big part of this was cloud services.
Okay.
And that is kind of the perfect pair for mobile devices, because then you have this whole infrastructure, this whole team at a national level connected at a low cost, which was really important because obviously it's a nonprofit, it's not unlimited funds. And so those 3 things were the ones who allowed us to really reach this population. And what we proved with this project was that using online communication, mobile devices, and cloud services, you can effectively reach rural or marginalized populations at a national level with a very small core team and a low budget.
All right, very exciting. I love the niche. So let's dive into it. What were the first steps?
So what we did was essentially use a whole host of tools to get to do this. We didn't discard mass media.
Well, let me ask you first. What about assessment, determining where the people are, what their levels of connectedness are?
Well, that was easy. There's a lot of information about distribution of Hispanics, and in our presentation there's a very cool map that shows you the share of the population per county that is Hispanic.
Okay.
So
this is all in the U.S.
Exactly, and
okay.
The census is the first go-to place, and it's very easy to flag where to go. But in their case, what they did, because obviously this has to be funded, so they had to prove the concept, and so they started in Houston with one community, And when it went really well there, then they expanded to 5 communities and then more and more. And then 4 years later, they're reaching 18 states in the United States.
Outstanding.
Obviously,
Yeah.
the goal is to get to all states
No, but you got to
nationwide.
take it incremental. You start with a community and then a bunch of states, that's a big leap.
And
to
proving
18 states.
Exactly. And it's very important to prove to the donors that the money is well spent, that you're
Yes.
doing a good job. And so they've been doing that very effectively. And I think that those 18 states have been chosen based on, where are you going to have the biggest impact. So,
Okay.
of course, states like Texas, California, winning first.
How were they able to measure? And we can come back to this later on. But just sort of overview. How were they able to measure outcomes?
Oh, definitely through
and impact.
The biggest tool that they used was a Salesforce system. And this system was what the field team used on their iPads on the field. And it was what the people in Washington had also available. And this system runs the entire operation. And so everything that happened, if you attended an event, that data was entered. If there was a PSA that ran on your show, that was logged. And ultimately, once you do all that data entry and in a decentralized way, so that every user does their part, then because you have an integrated system, it all comes together, and then you can report on it more effectively.
Okay, so the outcomes were points of contact.
That was one part of it. The other thing was, first of all, we would do, I will still do post event surveys. So we collect data from people and we collect data from the speaker about how the event went, what you learned, and we kind of try to gauge whether they actually learned the talking points of the event.
Okay. All right. So it was more than just a contact, but what was learned
Exactly.
from the contact or the event.
Exactly.
Yes. All right.
The other thing that we did
makes a lot of sense.
The other thing that we did was a huge population study to evaluate whether not only they learn, because there's 3 stages for behavior to change. You have to have knowledge about it. You have to know that there's a problem. You have to be motivated to change. And then you have to have access to the resources you need to change.
All right.
And we've been addressing all 3. But to be able to prove that the last one, the access and the action took place, we needed to do a study. So we did. And we proved that when you were able to educate people through a grassroots event with a community leader that they trust and kind of build that knowledge and create the perception of risk. For example, we did one big part of what we did was breast cancer and colon cancer prevention.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what some of the messages were, but go ahead. We'll get to that. Yeah.
And so for that, you have to actually make sure people got tested.
Yeah, screened, right.
Exactly.
Right.
And so this study allowed us to prove what the success rate was. And, out of all the people that attended this event, that received the information, the motivation, and was made available resources for them to go get tested, how many actually did get tested?
All right.
And the results were very good. And so we've been just building on that and improving over the years to make sure that we reach as many Hispanics as we can.
Okay, really cool. And of course, you mentioned Salesforce.
Yes.
And doing this on a low budget. Salesforce, of course, donated
exactly
for nonprofits. I think it's up to 10 licenses, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right? Salesforce is free for nonprofits?
Well, the first 10 licenses are donated, and then you get a huge discount for the ones after that. It's huge.
So,
and for this organization in particular, so far they've received $336,000 worth of donations. Part of that, or most of that, from Salesforce, but a lot of that also from Google through the Google nonprofit program. They run Google ads.
Yeah.
Donated by Google.
Okay.
100%.
So let's talk about some of the tools that were used. So we've touched on Salesforce.
Yes.
Drupal. You use Drupal.
Yes.
Let's acquaint listeners maybe probably more familiar with WordPress than Drupal. So explain what Drupal is.
Drupal is a content management system platform, and it's being used very widely. The White House website is built on Drupal.
Oh, really? Oh, excellent.
And so it's very popular and very robust. And
see the nuggets you can learn on nonprofit radio? It's remarkable. The White House platform is not WordPress or even customized. It's Drupal. It's Drupal based.
Yeah.
All right.
And so
Stick with nonprofit radio. I've been telling you for years. Listen to me. Listen to Osvaldo. Go ahead. Sorry.
and so the main thing is whenever we chose the technology was, is it open source or is it donated or discounted? Because the savings are remarkable. And so Drupal was what we used for the front end, Salesforce for the back end. But then they also, because this is a distributed team throughout the country, they needed to be able to collaborate. And so again, with the Google for Nonprofit program, they were able to get Google Apps
Yes.
for free.
Okay.
And so their email, their calendar, they can do Hangouts and collaborate and also have a shared drive using Google Drive. And so using all of these tools, they're able to stay in touch, to stay connected, and to coordinate. And this goes not just to the core team in Washington, but they also gave iPads to the field team, to the community and faith-based leaders in the community so that they could stay connected with this network. So they expanded their team through volunteers, essentially, very, very effectively through the use of the mobile devices and the cloud services, and of course, online communication to distribute the information.
All right. Was more of the communication mobile-based than online? Because there's a greater penetration of mobile devices than there is desktop and laptop computers?
So what we try to do is
I mean mobile native, or was it more online and then mobile optimized?
exactly that's the key. Because of cost, it's very, for nonprofits it tends to be prohibitive to have an app for every platform, especially when you have to do Android for so many different devices.
Yeah.
And so web apps or web solutions make more sense.
Okay. Let's turn to the grassroots component of this, because that was important.
A huge
this
deal.
Was very important. It was not just online, with I guess local community organizations that are trusted in the local place.
Exactly, and trusted is the key word, because an undocumented immigrant is probably not going to trust an outsider to come and tell them, let's gather you all in this room and talk to you. And so being able to reach them through the church that they attend or through the community center in their community that they already trust, and the people in there that they already trust, and instead of having an outsider talk to them, have the leaders that they already know talk to them about this specific topic, was very, very, very important. So the organization tried to engage these leaders, and right now the network is 2,000 people strong throughout the United States.
2,000?
More than 2,000 leaders throughout the United States are connected to this organization, engaged by this organization, and participate and lead these events that are happening as we speak.
And that's the Hispanic Access Foundation.
Yes.
HAF. Were all the messages about breast and colon cancer?
Well, that was part of it. They address.
What were the others?
They have 4 areas.
Okay.
There's education, there's health, of course, and the Cancer Project is an example of that. There's also finance, and there is the environment. And the reason why these 4 are important is because in the case of finance, what they realized is you have to help people improve their lives throughout. If there's no money, there's no health. And so being able to, and the main thing for immigrants is being in the numbers, being in the statistics. And so submitting your taxes, even if you're undocumented, is huge, because if at any point in time in the future there's immigration reform, you have to have that history that you've been residing in the United States and filing your taxes
compliant
for years.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
And that's a huge thing, because there's no tradition in Latin America of doing that. So educating people that in the United States you do have to file taxes regularly is a big deal.
What were the outcomes you were measuring in the environment part messages?
So the thing about the environment is that when you poll Hispanics, they're all very aware of it. They are aware that you have to preserve the environment, that climate change is important. But many times, even though they want to, a lot of Hispanics live in urban areas, and they don't really get out much besides doing a lot of work. And so being able to create awareness, especially among the youth, that all these national parks are available to you, that you have to take care of them, that if you go to a national park, you take care of it. was very important because it created this more well-rounded
How did you measure the
citizen.
How did you measure the impact of those national parks announcements?
So the idea is beyond announcements. We actually organized tours and took people there.
Oh, okay.
And so the post event survey was very important to gauge how they felt
How many people numbers attended the tours?
and what they learned and how they felt. Yeah,
All right.
definitely.
Excellent, excellent. And what about on the education side? What were the messages there?
There was a lot about making sure that the people can first of all there was this very interesting project about distributing books to Hispanics and creating the habit of reading, of learning. So that was a big part of it. But I think that the most important takeaway is that it is possible that a nonprofit with a low budget and a
Yes.
small team can really use these three tools: online communication, mobile devices, and cloud services, to reach very hard to reach populations effectively.
Yeah, excellent. All right, now we still have a good amount of time left. So, tell us, were there any other tools besides the Drupal, Salesforce, and the Google apps that were important?
Yes, so they've used a whole host of things. So
Yeah.
one big
Because this is all valuable. I mean, even if you're not trying to reach rural and marginalized populations,
definitely.
but in terms of low cost, valuable, really helpful tools for nonprofits.
definitely, yes.
Whatever work you're engaged in. So, yeah, what else was valuable?
So the important thing I think within Salesforce, the App Exchange, the application store that they have is very important because there's a lot of free apps.
It's a Salesforce application store?
The App Exchange,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and having these apps available for free was huge because it allowed us to expand the infrastructure and do more things than what the core Salesforce system can do at a very low cost. The most important one for them was project management. And you can imagine running a national operation with a bunch of volunteers spread throughout the country, how hard it could be if you don't have the system in place to manage every little to-do and to organize things. And so there's a free app in the App Exchange called Milestones PM.
Milestones
PM.
PM. All right.
This is a free project management tool that you can just install in your Salesforce application, and having it in one system was huge. There are others that are. There's a lot of. Go
This
ahead.
is outstanding to me because first of all, Salesforce is free. First 10 licenses. So let's assume our audience is small and mid-sized nonprofits.
Exactly.
Let's assume they probably don't need more than 10 licenses. But anyway, but then there's a deep discount beyond that. But then the everything in the App Exchange is free.
Well, not everything, but a lot of it.
But this one is this project management tool, which is again called
Milestones PM.
Milestones PM, free. So free Salesforce and then free add-on, and obviously valuable because it's managing a project of 2,000 volunteers across 18 states.
Exactly.
Really outstanding. What other tools can you share?
So the other thing that we did was looking for whatever was donated, open source, or discounted. And so in terms of email marketing, Vertical Response has at that point when we started, I think they've changed a little bit recently, but they had this donation program that you would get the first 10,000 emails for free. And so for them, it made sense to start with that because it gave them an instant saving. Even if they had to pay for the extra emails, it gave them just like Salesforce gives you this instant push. And so, but the beauty of it is that it integrates with Salesforce, so they could go to one place and do everything they needed to do. So Vertical Response, there's an app in the App Exchange from Vertical Response that allows you to integrate it into Salesforce.
Oh. It's remarkable. That's outstanding. I mean, these are great resources. Really. All right. I'm adding Vertical Response to the list. No, that's excellent. What else? Please, more. What else did we use? Share. Don't hold back. What other tools are there?
So I think that the being able to when you combine it all, the key tool that I think it's very important to understand that didn't exist a few years ago is these mobile devices. In their case, the iPad, and they had iPads that were connected to a cell network, so they could be moving around and doing data entry. But even though it's not donated or free, having a tool for a relatively low budget that you can distribute to people, remote for them to work remotely is huge. And being able to use all of the other tools, Salesforce, Google Apps, and all this stuff through
Yeah.
this device really empowers people. And what we saw was, a pastor that's 60 years old that had never had access to a
Right.
device like this,
Right.
getting training and having so much enthusiasm for learning to use this tool, and then realizing that it really helped him, even if it was a little scary at the beginning. It really helped him do what he wanted to do, which is help people. All these people, they're not in it for the money, obviously, so they really want to
Yeah.
help people. And when you give them a tool that allows them to help more people, they just love it.
Love that. I love the story of the pastor. Let's spend a little time, our last couple minutes, on lessons learned at the grassroots level. So we've talked a lot about the digital and the technology side. Let's talk about the personal side, the people side of the grassroots work. Some lessons learned there.
Yeah, so the key thing for us was don't go it alone, partner. And nonprofits are very good at doing that, partnering. But in this particular case, it's key because you can't go into a community that is already a little off the grid and pretend to be an outsider and be heard and access people. And so being able to get to this community through people they trust was very, very, very important. Now, these people also need to be able to trust you as an organization.
Yes, right.
And so a lot of the work that the Hispanic Access Foundation did was reaching out to these pastors, getting them into a room and showing them everything that was in the works, everything that we're doing. This is even how we're handling data. This is how we're handling privacy. If we collect data from an undocumented immigrant, we're not sharing that with anyone. And creating that trust between the organization and the leader was important because if the leader trusts you, then the community trusts you. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this.
They're vouching for the larger organization.
Exactly.
The local leaders are vouching for the
Exactly.
umbrella.
They're putting their name on the line, and so they want to know that you are really for real.
Trust, critical, both between the organization and the leader and the people, and then you'll get the third leg of the triangle between the people and the organization.
Exactly.
And
little by little.
Well, it's and then I was going to say, and then the messages will be trusted.
Exactly.
Little by little, sounds like there's something there.
Yeah. So we've been at it for a few years, and what we've seen is that you go in the first time, pastor or the priest in some cases partners with you and brings people in and educates people. The first time the attendance might not be, you might not fill the room. The next time you do, and the following time, then they ask for it. And I think that there's a real need for information. People just don't feel comfortable asking for it.
Yeah. All right. But they open up.
Yes.
Okay. We have another minute and a half or so. What else on the personal, the grassroots organizing side? Other lessons there?
Well, the other thing is don't be afraid to use technology. The story about the pastor that was kind of scared at the beginning, it was very easy for everyone at that point to say, well, let's just not do that. Let's go back to paper, to pencil and paper. But that has a huge cost over the long term, especially for you to actually measure impact. And don't not being afraid of putting people out of their comfort zone and telling them, let's do this, let's do it together, and it's okay, is important. And I think that was a big lesson for me because a technology guy, I thought everybody was going to just say, yes, sure, that's it. And it wasn't.
Excellent.
It took some convincing, but be persistent because ultimately once they get used to it, then it becomes something that they can't work without.
Osvaldo Gomez, Technology Director for Upleaf. Very inspiring story. That's outstanding. Thank you very much for sharing.
Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. This is Tony Martignetti, nonprofit radio coverage of the Nonprofit Technology Conference, NTC 2015. Thank you so much for being with us.